teachers told halt remote instruction because it's not equitable. Because no one learns anything unless everyone learns exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. For progressives, difference is always discrimination. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and screw you, Philly. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we're discussing how celebrities are using their influence to help during the coronavirus quarantine. Some good and some not so good. Plus, we get educated on George Orwell's classic, Instant Classics, 1984. So that'll be fantastic. But we start in Philadelphia, where teachers are being told K-12 online instruction should have to come to a halt because it's not equitable. See, apparently in Philadelphia, that's my screw you, Philadelphia. Some people are complaining that not everybody has the same internet access, not everyone has the same computer capacity. So if you're going to teach kids online while they're stuck at home, you got to stop doing it because it's discriminatory, Katie.
Well, in this, the people complaining who are saying it's not equitable comes from Naomi Wyatt, who's a superintendent, William Hyatt's chief of staff. So she's like second in command. And Malika Savoy Brooks, who's the chief academic support officer. And they cited that recent guidance from both the state and federal education departments. It says, we may not offer remote instruction to some students unless we can serve all children. And that was according to both of them. As we all know, some of our students have special instructional needs. Some lack access to a computer, and some will have responsibility for taking care of younger siblings or older relatives while their parents are at work. As a result, the district is not able to provide remote instruction during the period of school closures to all children.
So by this argument, if you've got a blind kid who can't see the computer screen, one, in your district, can't let anybody be educated because of that one special need kid. You got one kid who can't get online because he's busy caring for an older grandparent. Can't educate everybody. This is progressive liberal logic when it comes to schooling. Notice that inclusion, as I've said 1,000 times, inclusion for the progressives trumps everything else. Let everyone suffer if we can't make everyone equally mediocre.
And we know that after this story actually came out, of course there was backlash. So after the policy was made public, the district clarified its stance the following day, basically, saying that teachers can offer, quote, optional online lessons as long as those who can't or don't participate are not penalized.
Right. So you're telling kids, the solution of Philadelphia is, look, if you choose not to go to school, if you're not interested in learning from home, if you'd rather sit at home and do nothing, you will not pay a price for it. And there is no advantage to the kid who actually does it other than getting an education.
As we always discuss on this show, you need to look at the bona fides of the people giving this advice. So Naomi, so everyone is aware, she's the chief of staff to the superintendent and chief talent officer.
Chief talent officer. We know what that means if you're Kamala Harris. I don't know what it means in this case.
She also, according to her profile, Naomi is responsible for creating a culture of change that leads to an equitable and functional school system for the 130,000 children in Philadelphia. There are 130,000 children that they were trying to say, well, if one of them has to care for grandpa, no one gets an education. And then we have a look at Dr. Malika Savoy Brooks, who's the chief academic support officer for Philadelphia, which is the 8th largest public school system, by the way. Her professional experience includes serving at every level, from being a teacher, an academic coach, a principal, an assistant superintendent, and central office administrator. So clearly she should know that every child deserves an education, but if any one of those kids is different, apparently that means no one gets any education. She also holds a Master of Science degree in elementary education and in educational leadership, and a doctorate degree in educational leadership with a strong focus on curriculum and instruction.
So she's got multiple degrees in education, and her entire experience has been in public schools. And that tells us why she knows absolutely nothing.
What
how utterly and thoroughly worthless her credentials are. But how much does she make in a year? We don't even know.
Well,
it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes,
let's
sure.
just say that.
Absolutely. Speaking of people who don't have credentials of much of anything, let's take a look at some celebrities who, during this corona crisis, they're without their own, Hollywood sets to go on. So they're going to sit at home, and they've decided that they are going to read books to children who are stuck in isolation, just like they are. Take a look.
Hello, I'm Amy.
And I'm Jen, and we're here to tell you about Save With Stories.
30 million children rely on school for food, and with school closures across the country, these children are extra vulnerable.
We had an idea. We're going to read you books. Here's why.
Save the Children and No Kid Hungry are on the ground serving children who need our help now more than ever.
They've set up a fund to directly address the food shortage and educational needs of kids affected by COVID-19.
So let me see if I understand this, Hollywood. You've bought the lie that there are 30 million American school kids. That's about 1/10 of the entire country, right? You've bought the lie that there are 30 million American school kids who only will be fed if they're at the public schools, right? You're telling me that 1 in 10 Americans will starve to death if they don't get free breakfast at the public schools. It is complete and utter nonsense. But here's my thing. Even if you think that's true, Amy and Jen, you're multi-millionaires. Why aren't you giving multi-million dollars to feed those kids? Why are you sitting in front of a camera and reading them books? By the way, with all due respect to you, which is very little respect, why don't you let the kids read the books? How about that, huh? How about you worry about letting the kids be trained to the point where they can read books themselves? And so, again, what purpose does it serve for you in Hollywood to sit there and read your books to little children, right, when they're starving to death, and apparently you're not contributing anything except your reading skills?
Calling me, I know.
You.
It means they get to be on screen because that's what they know, and they are jonesing
So,
hard
in other words,
to be on screen and getting that attention.
In other words, these attention hoes, right, have
There's
another...
some males in there, too.
Well, I would call them hoes, too.
Attention bros.
Bim hoes,
Bim
right?
hoes.
These celebrities just can't get enough FaceTime. Notice how they're not committing any money, right? What question? You're a middle schooler who is starving to death because you're not getting your free government lunches. What do you need more? Some bona fide Hollywood celebrity reading kids' books to you, probably about transgenderism? Or do you need money and food? If you said money and food, give Amy and Jen an email and say, quit reading to us, honey, and just write us a check.
You and your darn honeys.
Honey!
We do have a big list of children's authors also doing online reading alouds and activities. Now, I'll give them more credit because it's their books,
Sure.
and they're actually putting out basically different activities that students can do with their books. weareteachers.org, that's weareteachers.org, has this entire list of the children's authors who are doing these online read alouds and activities. And there's a very long list for any elementary authors, but there's also a virtual author activities for middle school. So if you have a middle schooler and they like J.K. Rowling's on there, but if, whoever the authors may be, parents take a look at it first to make sure it's appropriate. But they have this whole litany of different activities your middle schooler could do while reading the books along with them.
I mean, let's be clear. They're doing it not out of the goodness of their own hearts. They're doing it to advertise their own material.
True.
Nothing wrong with that. But at least they're not claiming they're doing this because kids are starving to death. Yeah. Amy Adams, 30 million children are going to die from food, but let me read this book to you, right?
You know what I have to say to you?
What?
Just imagine
for
all
the
the
love
people.
of God.
Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries.
The next story,
it isn't hard to do.
You're obviously teasing the next story, which is about all these celebrities singing Imagine for the coronavirus.
Just show the cringe.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
No hell below us.
Above us only sky. Imagine all the people
Living for today. Yeah.
Okay, so the thing that to take away from this, besides the cringeworthiness of this,
it's so
is every one
bad.
of them had to have a name label, because who the hell are they?
I knew a couple, but I didn't know
But even
half
the
of them.
ones I knew until I saw the name, I'm like, oh, that's who that is.
Yeah,
I
know.
mean, so they're
you know
nobodies.
why? You know why?
Why?
Because they didn't have all their makeup on. This really shows how much
Jeez.
makeup our celebrities
But they're
have to-
nobodies.
I know.
But how about this? How about we do a new version of John Lennon's classic, Imagine? And let's target liberals. Imagine there's no Hollywood. It's easy if you try. No spoiled brats lecturing us. Above us, no one gets high. Imagine all the clown show. No Harvey groping you.
You know he's got the coronavirus now.
Yes, he does. Well,
anyway,
yeah, among us many other ailments. So this is go back to Amy Adams and Jen, right? Jen Garner.
Jen Garner.
This is you're singing some communist manifesto song. Lenin actually called it that, by the way. You're singing some basic virtual communist manifesto song to protest or add support during the coronavirus, which came from what kind of government system?
I'm not allowed to say it. It would be xenophobic of me to say it.
Communism.
Okay, communist.
So
fine.
you're singing a communist song, and that's what it is. Let's imagine that all government, all police, all armies, all money goes away. And then we're going to pretend that when you strip away every pillar of society, Mr. Lenin, and I've said this before in my classes, Lenin had what, $50 million in the bank when he died? Something like that. I mean, here's a guy who is justifiably rich from his accomplishments, but his song is talk about a completely overrated anthem. All right, John, let's play along. Let's imagine there are no cops, no armies, no schools, no police officers. Let's imagine there's no money. You actually believe when every pillar of civilization is pulled down and we're back to the jungle, people will then start living for today. Right? No. What happens? We have all kinds of jungles in history, John. And what happens when you pull civilization down? Big fish eat little fish. Predators eat prey. That's what happens. It's not everybody living for today. It's everybody for themselves. And so here you are with now. John's been dead for a long time. Mm-hmm. Here you have these half-wit, almost unrecognizable celebrities.
No makeup.
Celebrities in the most italicized sense of the term, singing this to sort of buoy American hope and to show the world how unified we are. And the irony of that, the song praises a communist worldview.
Yep.
Without the slightest recognition that how much worse was this made by communist inaction in China. This is the kind of thing that you get from celebrities.
And if you look at all the lyrics, too, I think John Lennon was not woke enough, because there's a lyric that says a brotherhood of man. How dare you ever even suggest that?
Yep.
But I want to know, I'm not going to go back and watch the song, but I forgot who actually sings the no need for greed or hunger part, because that's the real slap in the face with all these Hollywood.
Need for greed. As if there's a need for greed any other time.
Right.
No need for greed or hunger. Okay, that's right. Because it seems to me that there are a lot of animals in the animal kingdom, when you get rid of civilization, that have a harder time eating than they do a better time, right? Yep. I promise you this. If we go back to everybody forage for himself in a civilizationless government, it could be a lot less food available. In fact, hint, some of you Hollywood celebrities might become food yourselves.
Ooh.
The Purge.
Larry the Cable Guy. Do you know Larry the Cable Guy?
I know Larry the Cable Guy.
He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
He actually tweeted out in response to what they sang. He said, "Here's a message from people with a lot of possessions that can take a year off of work and not flinch, telling everyone out of work to imagine a world with no possessions while people are living in the street half a mile away from them."
Yeah.
Get her done.
Think about the possessions of these people.
Exactly.
I mean, they're lecturing you about how possessions are the problem from their Malibu condos, right? With their fleet of cars and their private jets. Again, the celebutards we saw probably aren't in that tax bracket. So if you're going to choose a Beatles theme song, I realize John was a solo artist at the time. How about we go back to George Harrison's Taxman? Right? Right?
That's a good one.
Go listen to that. What a conservative anthem that was from the most spiritual of Beatles, right? Let me tell you how it will be. There's 1 for you, 19 for me, because I'm the tax man. Ooh, the tax man. How about that anthem? You want to sing something that's got a little guts to it? How about that?
Now, was that an instant classic?
That was not an instant classic, although it could be.
But you know what is an instant classic?
What is an instant classic?
English novelist George Orwell's 1984, which was actually published in 1949, but he finished it in 1948, and that's why he named it. He flipped it around and said 1984. Anyway, it's a dystopian novel involving complete government overreach, totalitarian society, where everyone is under surveillance all the time. Language is completely controlled, and history is rewritten constantly. Education is simply propaganda. And for everyone who possibly has read this book, just know that it's often been a banned book across the United States of America this century.
Yeah, we call these instant classics. We call this segment instant classics because all we can do in 5 minutes is tease these great works of art for you. But this teaser, I hope this one makes you run out and buy the book immediately. Talking 1949, we're talking about the first few years after World War II. We're talking about the time of the spread of global communism. The Cold War was ratcheting really hot. The Korean War was already underway. And so what we have here is beginning to be underway. So we have here here from Orwell is prophetic, right? And you think about the things you just listed about 1984, particularly about education. Revisionist history. We are going to rewrite history so it conforms to our communist narrative, our fascist socialist narrative. We're going to ignore actual history. We're going to use the classroom. We're going to use language to indoctrinate, not to illuminate. We're going to stamp out. In fact, at one point in the book, right, it was asked, if you wanted to imagine the future of mankind, imagine a boot stomping on a human face, right? This book was 70 years ago now.
It is.
Accurately predicted where we were going to go, and where we were going to go not by being taken over by fascists and Nazis. This is the slow creep of soft progressive socialism. In 70 years from this moment that Orwell was writing, it's not Nazis who did this to us. It is the slow progressive creep of soft-minded, addle-brained socialism. Let me read you this quote, the one and the only quote we removed from the book to tease this great book for you. Here's what Orwell writes. By 2050, earlier probably, all real knowledge of old speak will have disappeared. Old speak is traditional learning, traditional knowledge, classical education. By 2050, Orwell writes, earlier probably, all real knowledge of old speak will have disappeared. The whole literature of the past will have been destroyed. Chaucer, Shakespeare, Milton, Byron, they'll exist only in newspeak versions, not merely changed into something different, but actually changed into something contradictory of where they used to be. The whole climate of thought will be different. In fact, there will be no thought as we understand it now. Orthodoxy to progressive causes means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy for the progressives is unconsciousness. And I got to tell you, as somebody who teaches literature, it's exactly what's happened here. We're teaching kids Shakespeare, Chaucer, Milton to the degree that, well, on a much diminished scale. We don't teach the classics in public school almost at all. But the ones we do teach, the good books that do manage to get to your kids, it's not Shakespeare. It's Shakespeare filtered through socialist feminism or socialist Marxism.
And with you reading that, if you at home, mom and dad or student listening, if you didn't get a chill up and down your spine, then you haven't been paying attention to what's happening in the world today. And maybe you are one of those students who've stuck in the public school and haven't been able to actually read good books like 1984. And I strongly, strongly encourage you to go out, read the entire novel, and then come back to us, and we're going to talk about it someday.
Yeah, and why don't you, if your kids are sitting at home, especially if you have kids in upper middle school and high school, get a couple copies of this book. I'm sure Amazon can deliver those, right? Get a couple copies of this book and read them. I tell you, if you spend an hour a day for a couple of weeks reading this book with your kids and having conversations about it, your kids will get a better education than they get in 8 hours than a month's worth of public school education. And you think about how many things that are going on with our government, how many things are going on with lawlessness, the idea that the government is forcing things closed without really the ability to do it. You look at the kinds of overreach of government, and you look at what progressives are trying to do. You sit down with this book over a couple of weeks and you read it, your kids will not have missed any school. They will have had education better than anything they would have got in public school in those 2 weeks.
And if you have any questions, concerns about it, Dr. Duke and I, we've read this book, we've taught this book to people, we will help you. So just reach out to us and we will help you.
As with always in our instant classics, we started with our first one yesterday, which was Caravaggio's great painting, The Calling of St. Matthew. Today, it is George Orwell's 1984. If you have any questions at all about any of the classics we highlight in 5 minutes, or if you have suggestions of your own for what texts or books or paintings or sculptures or plays we should do for instant classics, hit us up with an email. We'll try to make it happen.
And that's Tuesday, people. If you like the show, please help us keep others educated by sharing this episode with your family and friends on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and or Parler.
And before we go, just a quick reminder, despite millions and millions of American school kids being ordered to stay home, Freedom Project Academy students haven't missed a beat. Our kids, because they learn right from the comfort of their own living rooms. We have real teachers in the comfort of their living rooms teaching your kids through the computer in your own living room. No coronavirus, no sex ed, no radical progressivism, just real solid education of the kind George Orwell would have applauded. If you have a student in K-12, take a look at our Judeo-Christian live online classes for next fall. Request your your free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com. Let's go back to old speak, when kids learned what actually happened, not how progressives filter it. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. And until next time, my friends, stay 1984.